conflicts of interest that people haven't already raised on the conflict of interest note. And so that's public forum in this meeting. The confirmation of minutes for the 24th of August 2020 meeting. Mark, if the moment next change
Secondly, we also have minutes in page 10 of the agenda, point number 6 around Whakaro. There was discussion there, and my comments were captured to say that I was happy to move this particular project, but then I was concerned around the naming of it, and that it should be a step in the journey with the district and community committees as well.
So just noting some connection back to community committees there, Shane, on this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Any further changes to those minutes? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Declare it carried. The next item is my report on page 14. There's a number of things that have occurred over the last month. I've been quite busy with different visits and presentations from council, as well as meeting or two meetings with ministers from the National Party to talk through issues that they currently have and are interested in Selwyn's point of view. The first one of those was with Nicola Grigg and Chris Bishop, who was in town thinking about growth and transport related matters and infrastructure provision. It was good to talk with Chris. I hadn't met him before, and it seemed like a whole lot of the things that he was asking me for answers on about how we were seeing things. There were lots of nods in agreement, which was good to get from. It's always good to get it from government rather than them thinking differently. I've also attended with Nicola a couple of visits to Tomutu and to Hororata to talk about flooding and flooding issues. ECAN was present at both of those meetings and have continued to follow up with ECAN about council presentation to them for their draft annual plan next year and the ability to have extra funding in the system next year. Up to them how they do that and whether that's going to change in rating, which we've asked for them, we've asked for that for about 5 years now, or whether they find some other way of funding that but actually increase Selwyn's spend to be across the catchment, not just in the current river rating areas, which will be good. Megan Woods came to the Canterbury Meal Forum and we talked with her about matters for Canterbury. Transport was a pretty key one there, and Three Waters obviously things that are in front of mind for Canterbury councils. And I've had a meeting with Nanana, who just scheduled and rescheduled and speak because of the last of the Queen exchange again, but speaking to me with her this week last month in the diary for tomorrow. So those are some of the ministers' meetings that have been undertaken. And the last one that I've given a little bit of commentary on there is around Kiwi Rail and our connection with them. The Meal Forum has been pretty interested in getting freight off roads, and a key part of that is using virtual shipping and rail. And so the Kiwi Rail site visit was looking to Waltham and see the investment that Kiwi Rail is making into being able to maintain all their engines and carriages here in Christchurch, across the Christchurch, and as well as what's going on in Dunedin. But the key part was looking down at the Sinlay rail siding, 16,000 trucks per year moved off the road because of that one rail siding. We're in transport putting in a rail siding in Ashburton as well, which will be open to more than just a single business, but looking at how we move things that could more efficiently be moved by rail if there was an opportunity to get them onto the rail, have that transition work in our favour. There's always going to be the need for trucks and the need for a lot of shorter distances that's been covered by trucks, but there's currently a lot of freight moved across the South Island on trucks that could, given the right circumstances, being moved onto rail. So yeah, happy to answer any questions or anything else about that report. Mark.
Thank you. You're meeting on the 9th of August with Mr. Barry Bragg regarding housing. What's his role in housing and Selwyn?
So it was a follow-up to a meeting with Tani Watty from Naitoa Hederi. Barry is leading some work for Naitoa Hederi around their housing, and so Tani was keen for me to connect with him to give him a view around what the Selwyn situation is. Yeah, there was no commitment to work or.
Thank you. It wasn't clear from the statement exactly whether he was government agent or what he. With your site visit to Kiwi Rail, would it be safe to say that their main focus is freight rather than commuter rail at the moment.
Kiwi Rail do not have a commuter rail focus for us. At the moment, the commuter rail discussion might be a part B or C to a future public transport discussion that Greater Christchurch is having. At the moment is mode agnostic and is looking at actually how we transition people from cars to a public transport system, again, where that's appropriate. So Kiwi Rail is aware of that conversation, but they're certainly not leading it. The place where Kiwi Rail is investing in passenger transport is around their tourism and making sure that they link opportunities for visits alongside the travel to here. Traditionally, they've just been the carriage and drop off, and they want to go further and wider than that.
On the tourism focus, it'd be nice if they, last month, the Trans Alpine, the discussion of Selwyn's highlights, we're not very flattering to Selwyn. It'd be nice if we could offer them a better commentary. And also, you didn't have a conversation about the future of the Rolton Railway Station and amongst the other changes that are going on. That's a to be heavy.
Yeah, the focus of the visit this time was around freight and tourism. We didn't talk about any specific future investment. One other thing I mentioned that at the start was the report that I was given at the Melbourne Community Board Awards evening, which was around Kororata flooding, which I said I'd present to council. I emailed it to the councillors yesterday and had previously brought that staff and they're aware of the work that's been done by a few locals to identify where they see the needs to improve the flooding situation for Kororata Township. Deborah.
Thank you. I see that you've been very busy talking to various people from Parliament. 2nd of August, you met with Simon Upton. Could you give us a briefing on that? And also on the 5th of August, you met with the Department of Internal Affairs, Michael Lovett and Paul Barker, regarding the government reform on Selwyn. Can you please give some background?
Yeah, sure. So Simon Upton, met with him. Tim Harris was with me in the last thing as well, and we talked about Malcolm moving to the first half, I think it was. He was interested in how a whole lot of the changes within the urban form is affecting our community. He's responsible for reporting back to Parliament on some of his views, and he was looking for some outside community views and talking to a number of councils about that. He was doing that on the basis of what we shared with him. Selwyn wasn't going to be named, and the comments that he was making back, but I don't think anything that we said anything that we haven't already said in public anyway. The current imbalance around urban growth and protection of highly productive land being a key thing amongst them. Tim, Harris, anything else from that meeting you remember that you'd like to share?
No, I think that's it. Yes, sir.
Cool. And the second one, Deborah, DIA, they were travelling through. I met with Michael, I've probably met him twice this year. Government reforms, they were really highlighting, well, I was highlighting to them the pressure that our council's under, and I know from my conversations with other councils across Canterbury, the pressure that we're all under, and particularly staff are under at the moment, with the amount of effort required to not only handle business as usual, but be prepared and forward thinking around what the government is going to ask for tomorrow, which is some of the requests have been on pretty short notice, requiring large amounts of information, and actually to know ahead of time when things are going to be needing to be known, we think we can a whole lot down. And Murray, England has been a key part of thinking about the water data that's been required and needed, and I've felt that often, regardless of what you think about the reform, the way that you go about the reform is going to matter, and the way that we set things up, and at the moment it's not been done as well as it could be.
Just with regards to submissions to the electoral reform, which I know are in public submission prior to the reform for local government, I'm just wondering, has anyone had the opportunity to look at that piece of legislation, and have they actually put the tail before the head, shall we say, with regards to the review of local government? Just curious with regards to the timing of that piece of legislation coming out before the reform for local government. So,
I don't know.
I did
I
send
haven't.
you an email, and copied you into an email, so.
Yes, you did. My focus has been around the future of local government piece work that's been going on, so I haven't got involved in that, and I don't know if the government has.
No, not aware, but we can take a look at it.
Okay.
That's my advice.
Grant.
Thanks for the comprehensive report, particularly on the rail and the freight. I was wondering if you were able to advise us of QRail's thoughts about Ralston in particular. I know that Ashburton District Council advocated very strongly with QRail for some of the upgrades that happened in Ashburton. Significant build going on in Palmerston North around regional rail. We're seeing that Ralston in particular is ideally suited, but as we know, it's logistics hub of the South Island now. If you look at the data you showed us there, Sam, the Ralston Littleton link is the busiest in the South Island, so it's already showing to be extremely busy. So do they indicate to you your desire, or how do we advocate to actually, rather than having a piecemeal approach and having a substantial, particularly when you think of the likes of Wearing's, that type of truck loading thing, we've got Littleton Port and Tauranga Port, which are maritime load stock. Whereas they're hook into the network through the road transport, we haven't got that yet. We're waiting for private enterprise to pump that up, or is that we going to pay a leading role? So that's question one. I suppose the second question that I would ask is, as a council, we've repeatedly and been talked about commuter rail and the pros and cons and the negativity around commuter rail. What would be helpful, in my view, for the new council would be to actually QRail to arrange a tour. I think in conjunction with ECAN and Waimakariri, and actually travel the railway line from Ralston to Waimakariri. I'm sure QRail could organise that and actually understand the pinch points. And so, rather than sitting here pontificating about it, possibilities and yes and no's, if the new council is actually able to look at that and actually see whether the issues are and what is doable, that would be helpful.
Sure. On the first one, nothing formal other than they are aware. I guess in conversations that I had with QRail, there's the move from under the Port Hills to Middleton was about capacity being close to where the centre of the movements needed to be, and Middleton's sorted that at the time. The capacity within Middleton is, is reached. There's no further room to grow the rail line, and the next obvious place for that to move is to our district. So that type of progression has been talked about, but I would, from the response I've had, it's more on the 10 to 30 year horizon for them rather than in the 1 to 10 year horizon.
Can I just comment on that? I mean, again, it's not our decision to make, but from the outside, it seems that QRail have made some important decisions when you're building new facilities, particularly the engineering base. We talked about Waltham and the train wash. If you go and build an amalgamated facility, surely you would start thinking of the future and try and co-locate those in one space. The roles would be a logical thing. So it seems that capital is being spent in the wrong place.
Yes. And the second one, Grant, I can talk to them about what happens around induction for new councils, but I think the decision is probably great. That is a greater Christchurch discussion, and so actually making sure all those parties are involved in it will be important, as you suggested. And for the, as we come in to a new term, for those of us that return and for those that join us, the ability to understand the journey around public transport that's currently been undertaken, because at the moment we're still waiting for draft and initial reports to come through. So knowing actually where that work is up to, at the moment it's felt like it's bubbling along, but the spatial strategy is taken preference. Malcolm, Sophie, looking at you too as well, but the reporting that's come back, whereas the public transport piece at the last regional transport meeting, there was someone came and talked about their ability to bring new technology to high-speed trains and how that might be the answer, and maybe will be, but we don't even know the location of the routes yet. We haven't even landed on corridors, which is going to be really key. Thank you. I'll move that you receive my report. Second, thanks, Malcolm. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? Declare it carries. District Licensing Committee, Malcolm. Thank you for joining us today for your report. If you to present things that are in it or that have been raised since the report, we'll make some questions around it.
Sure. Kia ora koutou. We've seen the Kiwi have been progressing, but we haven't yet seen an application for a license there. So we don't know when that will be arriving, but hopefully not too far away. The Selwyn Wine and Beer Festival that went ahead a couple of weeks ago, 27th of August, that went off without a hitch. And we've also received an application for a special license for the garden party, Lincoln University Garden Party, 21st of October. Don't go. But that's on again, so it's good to see a bit of normality coming back. Alcohol licensing continues to be busy, like everything else in the district. Just over 3 years ago, when I started, we had 9 licenses or licensed establishments just in our Wollaston CBD area. So from the square coming down into the Tennyson precinct, and now we have 15. In 2 months' time, we will have 18 on and off licenses. So despite COVID, we're still seeing massive growth right across the district. Yeah, just one example. And on that cheery note, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. With that increase in off licensing, are we seeing a corresponding increase in social problems, or are we simply spreading the business over a greater number of outlets?
So the increase in licenses are primarily on licenses, not off licenses. So we're not seeing any increase in bottle stores, primarily licensed restaurants. So things like Little India, Phoenix, Turkish Grill, Smoke, Joe's Garage, and soon to be Lone Star, and a place called Drafters. So just vibrant premises, businesses. So no bottle stores, no problems. We continue to be, according to the police, the safest district in New Zealand. So things are going good.
Controlled purchase operation, is that done on a random basis, or what the concern raised about organisations selling alcohol outreach?
No, it's controlled purchase operations. The police try to run 3 or 4 a year, and it's not based on any particular information. It's a random selected through the districts, and so
I guess the question I'm asking, there was no sort of hotspots where it's perceived that underagers were buying alcohol each of this.
no, there was no information received.
Mark, movement seconded for the reports. Oh, thanks, second. Anything else? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Go, Gary. Thank you very much.
Kia ora. Good luck with the elections.
Next we have Council 5 Wars update, Murray and Elaine.
Good afternoon, councillors. So as for our public agenda, we're starting on page 65 for our 5 Wars report, and I'll ask Elaine to give us an update on the Springfield water supply.
So a short update on the Springfield water supply. The pipeline between Springfield and Sheffield and the pump station in Annan is now installed and operational, so we can get water between Sheffield and Springfield. There is some small modifications still happening at the water treatment plant, but everything is on track.
Okay. So the key there is that the pipeline can be operational when we need it to be. So if we come across another incident, the pipeline is ready to go. So to the page 66, 3 waters reform. So council made, as you know, a submission on the water services entity bill, and me and Sam presented that to the SEC committee on the 31st of August. Don't know if you want to mention anything there, or should I carry on? No. Just a point to note there. Council's also signed an agreement for transition funding, which government has allocated $574,000 to council, and this is our no worse off funding, so it allows backfilling the staff to make sure that reform and the transition happens smoothly. And council has also established a transition reform staff group led by myself. It started a couple of weeks ago, so we're sort of focused now on positioning council in the best possible way for the reforms. We'll move down now to the One Water strategy, and just to mention that we had a workshop on the 29th of August. Our next one was booked in for a couple of Mondays away, but of course, because it's now public holiday, we're going to reschedule that. I'll now move to page 67 and temporary coronation, and I'll pass across to Elaine.
So the temporary chlorination rollout program is now underway with Curwie, Darfield, and Tiparita now being temporarily chlorinated. We're still on track as per the timetable given in the council report. I can answer any questions after.
Perfect. And just to mention on that, the way the council rolls out chlorination for our suppliers is that we flush the lines first, and then we install chlorination at a very low level, and then ramp that up over the time to the appropriate levels to maintain. So that's the process that we go through. Over the page, chlorine exemptions, we made our first exemption application in late June. We're the first in New Zealand to do so. We've since then had a meeting with Taumata Hawaii on the 12th of August, and we received a letter back saying they received it and they commended the council on the structure and detail of the application. The next step for us is a site visit on the 28th of September, which will be a visit with staff, Taumata Hawaii, who's the regulator, and also an international expert, Dr. Dan Deere. So he's from Australia, and he'll be visiting the site to see how that's operated and contingency measures, etc., etc. So I think that's probably us for this Five Waters report. If anyone's got any questions, happy to take those. Yeah.
Thank you. Just on the Springfield water, there's a meeting Thursday, community drop-in meeting, drop-in session there. Staff are available to have a chat with any community members who want to call in. Focus of that is on the flooding, and yeah, the hopefully everyone's to chat and come. But you mentioned the water pipe. That's it could be operational, but it's not being used. Is the water that's there, will that be used every 6 months, you run something through it? How do we ensure that the water that's there is actually ready to go, within an hour of the weather forecast telling us that something bad is going to happen to our water supply in Springfield? Dramatic campaign around that.
So once the final modifications are completed, the water treatment plant will be continuously taking a small amount of water from Sheffield and blending with Springfield, so that if we lose the Springfield source, we can swap or blend depending on what the situation is. So that pipeline will be continuously turned over, so there shouldn't be any issues.
Okay, great. It's really interesting to see the West Melbourne board have a really high groundwater level there. So that seems, we know that it's been very big, but none of the other groundwater levels have changed as dramatically as that one here. So yeah, interesting to see what's happening beneath the surface. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. With the chlorination, we start low and heat for a required level. Is that required level a chlorination rate in the rectification network? That's a question that I've had from the community: is what is the target? You go to the treatment station, what is the target that we're actually aiming for in the rectification network?
Yeah, so to meet the drinking water standards, target is a minimum of 0.2 milligrams per litre at the end of the reticulation. So we need to dose into the reservoirs and then get that concentration all the way through. And generally speaking, there's not much of a decay, but if there is any decay, obviously you have to go through the fire rates at the start of the system and make sure you get it to the end of the system.
If you're in a township that has a tree-like reticulation rather than a ring main, those closer to the treatment might get a slightly higher level.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's correct.
Sophie.
Yeah, hopefully a quick question. I noticed from the list that Duntangel is due to receive chlorination in the 26th of September. I just wondered if there was any impact for them due to the additional public holiday.
Yeah, so it's the week starting, so it'll probably be the 27th now.
Thank you. And I'm going to bring forth the fact that both Councillor and Dennis and myself, we should organise coronation and free water meeting on behalf of the council, held in Minka. And I'm going to go kudos to Dr. Moses. 200 plus people turned up. From different varying interests, shall we say. But at the end of the day, it was a well, I thought, organised meeting in which everyone was given an opportunity to speak. And So I just want to highlight that. One of the issues that did actually gain some interest after the meeting was, I guess, how do we actually treat our water supply to actually take chlorine out? We do have that information on our website, but is it appropriate for us to actually be able to have more of a direction for people if they want to take the chlorine at a point of gate source versus a drinking water source from the pipe? So just wondering whether we can actually give some more information to our public on those particular issues under the legislative act.
It's in our website, yeah.
Just doing a quick input.
Yeah, so we can add some details. We're not going to mention, certain suppliers, but there's some technology that can remove chlorine for sure, under bench units or whole dwelling units, so we can provide some information on what type of device you would need for that.
It's just that we do mention that, but it would be, I know for what community, that would be really, really helpful to understand what was available and how it can be put in supplies.
I wasn't going to start with that, but my understanding was, isn't it as simple as putting it in the jug and standing it on the
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way to do that. Yep, for sure. Thank you.
First question,
Mhm.
I think it's about one water, particularly the one in Japan. Just looking at it from a bit of perspective, there's no rural voice there. Where's the rural voice of, particularly in the USA or the CPW or the farming lobby? Seem to be missing a large chunk of their representation. We use significant use of water. So just think it's probably starting that process, we should try and include people now rather than try and drag them all out.
Yep. Cool, I might respond to that first. So obviously it's a co-design with Ruringa and Council. But the last meeting, and I didn't mention this in the notes, but it was about how we engage with the wider community, and so that will come through the next report. So point taken.
Why wouldn't you co-design some of the largest users of water? It seems to be an anomaly that co-design is not with some of the big users. That's my opinion. So second thing was looking about back in the minutes of previous meetings, particularly the 11th of May, we requested that CEO write some after ROI advanced validation that sponsor methodology for exemptions. Is that reply we received?
I'm not sitting around at that kind of day. There's one I believe. Yeah, see what David you answer that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Grant, it was, and I'll be back in the office later this week, so I'll dig out a copy of that response and circulate it around to everybody.
Third thing, the same meeting, where this people reflect on the this started with South Region Vitality, we were thrown unexpectedly without notification. But the 11th of May meeting, one of the resolutions was that they would be remediated, and I should stress they would then be put forward as exemptions. It's noted in the paper today that you're putting forward Springston and Brilliant as the next case. I think the residents of South Region Vitality are expecting that they would be listed when they undertaken that issue. So yes, I'd like that reviewed and just progress made on that.
Yep. So I think say we will be applying for exemptions as we go through the schemes. We probably won't change that order, but we'll make sure that Selfridge is up front.
The last thing that was requested at the meeting was, and it's not the report, there is a matrix of where each scheme is at when the exemption is applied for in progress. So there's a clear and transparent to that community through the agendas about what is happening. There's a flow down along the field, so it is the little matrix and every requested. And the last thing I think is probably masterful delegation of the authority issues that are late. It's not business because I think we've all anticipated really felt the brunt of our community reinforcing the gambling plan submissions. The community doesn't want coronation. In fact, the very, very strong advice that I'm receiving from my local community is they would rather take a relatively low risk of poor water notice they must be imposed on them. We wish to reiterate the most strongest experience that they have been in the council sector.
Thanks, Grant.
Kia ora, Steve. Tēnā porua, Elaine, and Murray, to be around to report, total grants, probably around the exemption, foreign rates, a little bit confused. Murray said it would be upfront, but I thought the process on the other two, you're putting in South Bridge and put up to the front, or they would change the process on the other two exemption. So I'm moving on the next one. Just quickly, the timeline, they also Grant mentioned the transparency of our agendas, but I'm not sure whether they're ready to access to that transparency online, so that there's a green light or a transparent way that the timeline is being monitored, that our public can actually access. I think what gets in front spoke is that some of the feedback in the community is the transparency and communication. I guess what gets lost is the good work that council have done in the past. Grants mentioned the matrix, and that seems to get lost because we haven't get into of promoting the good work that council has before us and taken to get us to a safe place, to space. So that was just around the timelines. Sam, the question you regarding the three water reform submission to the select panel, and your what was the summary notes on council or so Selwyn district's position to the select committee.
This is what was in the report that we don't believe that it's the right thing itself, but we can understand why there's on the plan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just look after the moment, getting a reasonable amount of queries about coordination, and I think there's concerns. I wonder if we could alleviate some of those concerns by putting an article in the small relevant times with you would expect this or that, whatever, so that people do know what to understand and saying that it does settle down or whatever. But I think it would be quite important, because people are starting to speculate on their own, and so perhaps that might help.
Yeah, no, we take that on board, thank you.
Anything further? Move and second for this report. Shane and Deborah, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Thank you. On page 74, housing lines and India. Thank you for the report. Shame about the name. The name is quite confusing about, it's helpful for name to tell us what the thing is about, but hey, that's what we're required to do. So thank you for what you're doing to us, and if you take us through your report and times.
Well, you don't know bottom lines, is it? Or
it doesn't mean anything. You have bottom lines about
yeah, sure. So the housing bottom lines are a requirement in the National Policy Statement of Urban Development, and they be added to the district plans. We'll put as in the operative and the proposed plans. These are to clearly state the expected housing demand plus the appropriate competitiveness margin. So that work, the numbers are informed by the capacity assessment work that was completed July 21, and that capacity assessment around for Great Christchurch on the website there as well. So these are the bottom lines, is what the minimum we have to provide for, but it doesn't limit what we can achieve or enable beyond that. So you've got the numbers in the report there. So yeah, we'll update the operative plan and the proposed plan, and that'll be done in conjunction with our partners through a public notice and website update. That's the plan. So I think it's largely procedure. For any questions?
Yeah, great. So at minimum residential growth capacity, so people just looking at this report and wondering what's about ensuring that there's enough land available for houses in the future, thinking short, medium, and long term.
Yeah.
Deborah.
Thank you. Just for clarification, when we're talking about Selwyn and your report talks about Greater Christchurch area, and we had this with our partners, actually need to separate the two out from the Greater Christchurch Tier 1 partnership agreement versus the rest of Selwyn, or does what here meets that requirement for Selwyn?
Yes, so the capacity assessment work looked at Salem District. The housing bottom lines here are just looking at the Greater Christchurch element within that boundary, the urban number for that. So that is what's currently defined as our urban environment.
Okay, so when you've got area and you've got Selwyn, should that actually include Greater Christchurch, reference to the Greater Christchurch partnership? Just for clarification.
Yeah, I'll have a look at what the wording of the broader objectives that we're changing to make sure that it is referring to the Greater Christchurch. Yeah.
Right.
So taking from what you said, being that the base number was July 21, when you started.
Yeah, so this is the demand number. So yeah, that was
So I think what our rate payers would like to know is what the existing numbers and what's the definition. Do you got those numbers?
the existing demand number.
Yeah, so what how much has gone up? So the short mediums is like 8,100 density, and what was that for?
Yeah, so I think the current one is pretty close to that and maybe a little bit higher than that. So that would
Not maybe that's not like these 2,000 houses or 3,000
no.
houses. That last one.
Not since then. Yeah,
Take a long term and 50 years.
yeah, it'd be. I think it'd be pretty similar. Yeah.
And just continuing what we discussed the other day, the NPS urban development, the applications made will largely soak up that long-term capacity number if they're approved.
Yeah, for sure, probably above and beyond that. Yeah, I think
The
there's
standard is no requirement for us to actually zone additional capacity because we're already pretty much there.
no, we wouldn't be zoning anything additional following this, and if we would do anything, it would be through that Greater Christchurch Station Plan and the following steps from that.
Mark, have the movements to one standard B in part B of the resolution, which is housing bottom lines. We add in your words, break it, minimum housing capacity, is that your words?
Minimum residential growth capacity.
In brackets to the resolution, because that would, as you say, somebody reading it in the future will have some idea of what it was about. So I'm happy to move it with that amendment.
Seconded, Malcolm, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Yes. There we go. Item 11 is on page 77, Horizon Community Trust Memorandum of Understanding. Go on.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm really pleased to be able to present this draft MOU for council approval today. So there's been some pretty good progress made over the recent time with the Horizon Community Trust, which has been supported ably by Horizon. The memorandum is attached to the papers here that sets out process for us to provide a $1 million grants to trust for their contribution to building a community hub, and also the transfer of land of the current community board and surrounding land to the trust for the purposes of that community hub. It's been a really good process with the team in recent times. Both days we can really well get in this house when we go to the conclusion.
Thanks, Bill. I'll do it.
Yeah, we're
Jenny, second. Anything people would like to hear conversation? Well,
I'd kind of like to thank the staff and everyone that's been involved with this, because it's been an ongoing thing and it's been fraught with problems all the way through. But I think we've got an answer now that will see our community for a long time, and it's affordable to the council and to the community. So I wish you all the best.
okay, right.
Reiterate Bob's thanks to the staff of trying to resolve a very difficult situation. Taking my putting my personal hat on, I continue to have strong reservations about this project, and I perceive that I'm concerned that it's going to go back to the stable in the future. and we heard a resolution from Michael, was reminding us that we did build our own facility in the reserve. That we go ahead, I think start with it.
Thank you. I too congratulate staff in the Horror community and reaching this point. I was one who called for the $1 million to go through the annual plan process and the memorandum of understanding before it was transferred. So I'm pleased that that process has been followed and we've got to this point. It clearly lays out the expectations from council and community. Clearly states that we will not be providing rating support for the facility, despite some commentary that we might be. It will be like any of the other independently owned facilities in our district. So congratulations to all parties.
Thanks, Mark. Shane.
Yes, congratulations and thanks to all of our councillors. Well done. I guess referring to Grant's concerns, but also done something in Paul said was that it was for a long time. It was actually forever. So much to confirm that the new council powers review Cal and the agreement is totally in the management forever. Thank you.
It's correct.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? There it carries. Thank you. Next, we have the register of documents signed and sealed. Page 127. Moved and seconded. Jenny, thank you. Seconded. Jeff? Yep. Thank you. Any questions or comments on this, Grant?
We have two further transfers of 7 huts licenses. I still raise concerns with the new purchases, and really, if I'm here, like I asked before, that has been confirmed that the new purchases are aware of the fragile nature of the license down there and the challenges faced. I've had verbal assurance that the limb note is adequate. I'm not sure what the license conditions are. I think what I would suggest I'd like to see is perhaps a comprehensive report at the next meeting where actually outlines the limb note, outlines the license conditions, and that the understanding new purchases have on what they're taking on, because it does concern.
Yeah, having on board, right, David, you've got a hand up on response.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Grant, that is a project that we're working on at the moment. We've got a wee staff group. Interestingly, in the last 2.5 years, there's about 30 properties have changed hands. So there's no slowdown on that transaction, but it's around the certainty, and we're looking to align the license with the consent, and also aware of the wastewater connection issues that we've got facing us as well down there. So that's a definite for new council in November.
And key concern I have is probably the climate change challenges that that community might face as well. I just want people to understand that maybe purchasing a property which may not be capable of particular.
Mr. Mayor, can I just add that part of our discussions that we've had on this subject so far have also included DOC and Naitahu. So we're actually looking at the 3 communities concurrently. Climate change is obviously the big impact for all 3.
Thanks, David. I think also the conversation around an improvement in the infrastructure around wastewater doesn't secure a long-term future for huts on that site, and that when that in as a short to medium term answer more huts, but might be a long-term solution around camping or other facilities around the lake. We need to think about lake level trying to flooding has come into that recently, and obviously is impacting areas around the coast. So being really clear with the community around whatever council investment ends up going into selling huts around an answer to their wastewater issues. It's not about ensuring status quo forever. There's an interim solution. Different.
Thank you. Just a follow up with regards to that, and I'd like to thank Tanya for actually answering some of the queries, but there just seems to be the Hardy annual about, do we as a council have the ability to even charge for the hut to be on that particular land area. And I would just, any future report going forward, I would like every hut owner to fully understand the jurisdiction that the council has in setting those rates. Because it's a highly annual question that comes through from some of the hut owners, and many of them would be long-term hut owners, I might add, that are asking these questions. So just like to add that to the report, please.
Thanks, Deborah. David?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we do definitely have that ability to effect the charge. One of the things that we're conscious of in the work that we're doing in the background is that post 1st of July 2024, of course, we will not have the ability, however, to charge for water, wastewater, etc. So in terms of the breakdown of the charge that we're levying on an annual basis, we're getting absolute clarity on how that is made up and what those services are for, and what will not be our responsibility post that key date in 24.
Thanks, David, for that. Do we have a movement second for these? We did. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That carries. Thank you. We will now confirm resolution to exclude the public. Movement second. Thanks, Pete and Malcolm. All those in favour say aye. Against? That carries. And we'll take 15 minutes and start at 2:10 and the next portion of the meeting. Thank you. Yeah, completely good.